This is Alexa Linton, and you're listening to the Whole Horse Podcast. I'm coming to you from the Cowichan Valley on beautiful Vancouver Island in Canada, and I'm excited to be bringing amazing instructors from around the world to share their knowledge about all the ways that we can keep ourselves and our horses well and happy, and about some of the cutting edge techniques, training, and different aspects that are coming into the horse industry and changing it from within. I'm so excited you're here, and I'm excited about the times that we live in and the shifts that are happening in the horse industry before our eyes. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. It's Alexa Linton here, and we're here for the Whole Horse Podcast. Today on the podcast, I have someone very near and dear to me. She has been in my life, I can't remember how long, but she's going to tell a story about it. And it's just been an absolute hoot of a ride ever since. I learned from her all the time, and her horses as well, and her cat Baxter, of course. And I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today, Geri.
Well, thank you, hon.
You're welcome. So we were debating what to call Geri in the beginning. And Geri technically is an executive coach, but she also tends to just share that she is a mammal existing in her natural habitat, and I love that. It makes me giggle every time I hear it. So Geri, today, we're going to kind of do our thing, which is just have these existential, mind-blowing conversations about all sorts of things.
That is a little bit of a hallmark of our relationship.
It really is. What edge are we exploring today?
I know. I was saying to Alexa just before we began that I checked back to the date that we met, and it was actually, so hold on to your hat here, October 9th, 2012.
2012, okay.
Ride for a little while. And it was interesting. It was a few people that brought me to you because your name was sort of mentioned in these hushed tones, like, oh, you should really meet and have you talk to. And so I knew you existed, but I was at a Josh Nickel clinic. I think it was the August of that year of 2012. And he, you know how generous he is with his time. I was an auditor, and I was talking to him about Libby. And Libby will come in here, a Canadian mare who I met in 2010, who I have the pleasure of having as a best friend. And I was talking to Josh about her tendency to freeze, to touch, her just not really wishing to engage, her fear. And he said to me, with horses like this, you have to get really creative. And it was that permission. All of a sudden, throw out the traditional rule book, throw down the training scale and all of these rules and thoughts around what happens now and next. And it was in that moment that I'm like, okay, let's do that. Let's get super creative. And I think it was about a couple months later that I called you.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow, we're coming up on our 6-year anniversary here.
I know.
That's amazing. And me and Geri meet up have met up pretty much every 3 to 4 weeks for the last 6 years. So we have a pretty incredible relationship, and connecting with your horses. And and I've been watching Geri over this time, I don't know if I want to say the word evolving, but like cultivating and remembering into her own knowing around some pieces that I'm so excited to have you share about today, Geri. So this concept around decolonization and sanctuary, and just the places that you've kind of gone to and ran to with this, the wisdom arising from your work with your horses and from your horses. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Libby and Lucy, and sort of your journey,
Mm-hmm.
encapsulated.
Right. Yeah. The Coles Notes version.
Coles Notes.
Well, I think probably like many of us, I'm going to make an assumption here. I came to horses fairly early. I can't remember when I started being drawn to horses, very young, but I remember getting on my little bike. I lived in Vancouver, and I was determined to work with horses at the age of 10. And I rode my bike down to Southlands in Vancouver,
Mm-hmm.
and I actually rode my bike to the riding club. And Hillary Oswald was the manager at Southlands at the time, and I must have marched up to her and told her that I wanted to work with horses, and she sent me to Bob Ross's barn, Grey Ross, and Wendy Elliott had just arrived from Britain, and that was my start. She gave me a job as a stable hand, and I was hooked from there, and started riding, and she would put me on the young horses, and I rode, and I got up to a point during university when I was riding 3-4 horses a day, and just never had my own quote.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't in the financial cards for me, but so I did a fair bit of riding and showing, and very traditional upbringing, very traditional. Wendy Elliott, Dietrich von Hofgarten, they were my teachers. And so after university, I took a break from horses. I had the means, but I didn't see a way of keeping horses. So that sort of traditional stabling, that way of being, and that didn't resonate for me. And it wasn't until I moved to Salt Spring Island that I had the space and the means to have to provide for care for horses. So Libby and Lucy came into my life around 2010.
Okay.
And a big part of my journey. Lucy, actually, Belgian paint mares, just a beautiful, beautiful soul. You know her.
I do. Yes.
So, whatever you want, you got kind of horse, and just lovely spirit. And Libby came into my life for December of 2010 with a whole different story.
Yes.
Right. And the first time I'd ever met a horse who really didn't want anything to do with me or the horse I rode in on, right? Just
or any other human for that matter.
Yeah. She was done. Absolutely done. Brood mare, rescued from starvation, separated from her dam at 4 months, bred year on year from the age of 2. She was cooked and just didn't want anything to do with me. And that's when, and I met you while living that question of whether I was good enough for her, whether I could be the person she needed me to be, how to be with this mare. Yeah. And she's actually been my portal to all of this learning. I call her my snortle, because she sort of opened up this whole world to me of a whole different way of being with horses. Let's say that.
My goodness, I love that term, snortle. I'm using that.
Oh yeah, take it. It's yours.
So let's fast forward a little bit into, you've been deep diving into, a very, very fascinating aspect. Tell us a little bit more about your recent learning and where you've been.
Yeah, well, I have to bring you into this because you took me down the rabbit hole, really. It was through you facilitating connection with Libby. And really, I will call it a remembering, a re-embodying of the awareness that we have that ability to learn another language, a non-human language, however that presents for us.
Yeah.
And so there was, through you, there was that opening to that language, and through that, through Libby feeling heard, through even my effort to learn horse, learn horse culture, to learn Libby's what Libby needed to make her agentic in her life, changed everything for us. And so you took me, you know, you sent me down that hole, girl.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're welcome. I don't think you're the only one.
I'm guessing not. Free fell down that hole, and found my way first to Nevzorov.
Yes. Right.
And that was an interesting exploration of not riding, of physically getting off the back of horses, and seeing what, you know, removing any question of the horse perceiving themselves as being dominated, controlled, manipulated, taking that off the table, especially for Libby. That was an important piece, that I wasn't going to step on her wishes or for her life. And I spent a number of years just sort of exploring and if we want to talk about colonization, that whole system of permission to dominate, where my expectations and privilege lived with horses. And I had a fair bit of it, you know.
As many of us, I mean, it's very built in. I mean, you know, if we, you know, Geri and I often talk about parallels in terms of the rather brutal history of Canada and its Indigenous peoples, and the colonization of horses, and both of those exist within systems that are very insidious and very sort of like, you know, like both Geri and I were born into very traditional ways of riding, you know, and it was just, it's what I call like get it done horsemanship, right? I mean, I'm sure you remember like just being screamed to just like, okay, I will do these things because my fear is overriding even my horse's fear, my fear of getting it wrong. And so that sense of, you know, to unpack this concept of what decolonization looks like. So, Geri, would you be open to sharing a little bit about your definition of both colonization and its, you know, this idea, this sort of new, you know, not new, but like new to many of us, idea of decolonization?
Well, and I have to, it's a great question.
Yeah.
And anything that I'm about to say has been nurtured by a mentor of mine. I'm an intern of Dr. Gay Bradshaw of Doulos, and Gay, or Dr. Bradshaw, is she holds doctorates in ecology and psychology, and she came to the fore with her work in South Africa around post-traumatic stress disorder in wild elephants.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and she's brought or pioneered a field of psychology called transspecies psychology. And within that field, it's a synthesis of neuroscience, psychology, and ethology. And then nested within that is really, I don't call it, is the field of liberation psychology. And liberation psychology is primarily concerned, I think, with empowering marginalized peoples, and that would also include Earth and non-humans. But it is the decolonization of psychology, and a shift away from sort of healing people to the extent that they can operate effectively in our world, in the Western world, to healing in a way that empowers their culture, that empowers their agency, that partners and accompanies them on the journey to building their own strategies and living their lives the way they wish to. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but it's that sort of way of being with people that is empowering, very mindful of their empowerment rather than any idea I might have of what that might look like for them, if that makes sense.
Oh, it does. It does. If we talk about, the concept of assimilation, I mean, really, realistically, that was grounded in my way is better than yours, and I will impose it upon you because you should be living in this way. And, we see that the absolute cultural devastation that's, created within our Indigenous communities in Canada. That mindset of inequality has absolutely devastated, our Indigenous people here, and I also see that, I'm excited and inspired to talk about this as it applies to animals as well.
I felt like, or what drew me to Gay was an exploration of sanctuary. What even that word means, whether it's a freedom from persecution, a survival space, or is it a freedom to? Is it an empowering space? And what does that look like for us to create that space for whoever we wish to create it for, right? And so that and what is it to create sanctuary, that safe space, and I think in exploring that required me to decolonize my mind.
Right. First step.
Yes, when you think about, okay, what would be a lovely space for horses, or what would be a lovely habitat, and in the traditional mind is, nice safe spaces and lovely fences and this and that and the stalls but have I asked the horse?
Yeah.
Right? What is psychological sanctuary? What is moral sanctuary? What is a physical sanctuary? What is ethical sanctuary and social sanctuary? What do all of these pieces look like for them, for each inhabitant of the space?
Wow. Yeah. And imagining that would be unique for, each horse, each person, who's, like I can imagine Lucy and Libby, for example, having different things that were valuable for them within that sanctuary.
Well, and I'm sure you've heard so many messages from your non-humans animals around what their wishes are. They must be so diverse.
Yeah, I mean, and Geri and I have been through a passing together of Lucy. And if you're open to sharing, Geri, around that, because it was Lucy had a very strong sense of what sanctuary looked like for her within that transition.
Yes. And thank you for helping us prepare
Of course.
for that. It was one of the hardest experiences, as you know. I mean, we probably all on this podcast can relate to these experiences. I think, and it was hard, and it was beautiful. And
Yeah.
it's such, that word just sort of catches in my throat. You just
Yeah.
sort of judge that word. Can I
Totally.
pair that with the passing of a most beloved friend?
Mm-hmm.
And beautiful in that the hearing of her request
Yeah.
around timing was, it was amazing, because I imagine that without a shadow of a doubt when a horse is ready to pass, and it's not usually a pretty moment when the vet needs to be called.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's my guess. With Lucy, one might say from the outside, one might question, was she ready?
Mm-hmm.
But because of how we'd worked together and that language, our understanding of each other was so clear, her request could not be, it was undeniable, her request. She was ready. And so it was so gentle. It was a gentle passing. And it was a mourning period where Libby paid her respects and took all the time that she needed. And it just was so harmonious. It was surprisingly harmonious.
Yeah.
Natural, if you can call a vet's. It's not. It felt right, and even the vet had explained that it was so peaceful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the fascinating part because I mean we here our horses are existing within domestication, and I'm sure you've turned over many of these stones of where's that balance line, because with a horse like Lucy who was in a lot of pain and it had chronic lameness, and would she have more than likely passed naturally or been assisted within in the wilderness if she was existing there, and I would hazard to say probably yes, that would be the case, so it's that, yeah. Where do you, I mean, you've probably done so much study on this, where's that line of, okay, here we are in this sort of human world, and yet what a thing, hey?
I know. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's I think that's the question that we dance with. And I don't know the answer, because I think it is the question that we all dance with. And freedom being a core value of mine, that's the dance. And the dance with Lucy and Libby, how it has been, how do we live free in this unfree world? How can we live attuned to our nature, attuned with nature as closely as possible, given that we're in a domesticated setting?
Yes.
Yeah. And it seems to be a moving edge, right? It's constantly in motion.
Yeah.
But I think holding that question, playing with that question, what freedoms do you need, and how can I avail them for you?
Yes. And I think that is so often the case with horses, is that they almost, I mean, not even almost, I think they do represent our own personal sense of freedom and how free we feel within ourselves to express and be, what we want to be, within the world. And so it's very common for people to impose, the same restrictions they might impose upon their own wild self, shall we
shall we call it?
Mm-hmm.
And I know you've been on that journey, you know, as I've known you, you know, from a very corporate kind of space. Tell us a little bit about that. What's this process of your own decolonization kind of, you know, looked like for you?
Well, I have here's my assumption. So I have a hunch here. We'll just sort of throw it out there and see if this works. So I feel like we have a central theme question that we all kind of chew on throughout our lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'll just, I've always been curious about what that darn V is doing between man and nature. What's the whole versus thing, you know? And so that translates to my freedom piece and the don't fence me in kind of mindset that I've rolled through life with. And it's come through in my work as an executive coach. I feel engagement and fulfillment is where one can fully express intrinsic nature. So it's been it's been my theme song. It's been the theme question, and I've lived that throughout my life. And and my work in the professional space has been all about, you know, just let them go. Let them go, they'll be fine. There's no Pandora's box here. Yeah. Let them be all they can be, and you'll thrive, right? And it's been that question in the professional space, in the career development space, is run parallel with the question with non-human animals. So when I provide space, provide sanctuary, attend to habitat that allows one to thrive, what does that look like? Because we're all domesticated. We're domesticated. Yeah. Crap. Sorry. Can we bust through that and have some free expression here, please? Yeah.
Yeah. And I know, you know, Libby and you especially have had quite a journey.
Well, you've been there.
I've been there. Watching that, you know, that dance that you've had with your own fear and your own, you know, process around her expression.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, absolutely. And so interesting because I butted up against that. The message when Libby came into my life was, you're going to need to be big and you're going to need to be strong, you know, which translated in my mind is the stronger one's going to win here.
Libby versus Geri.
Exact. The V, right? Here we go with the V. This is going to get ugly. And
yes.
And the answer has been, how free how can I show up for a fully empowered 16.3 hand, 1,300 pounds of go, you know, yourself.
I do know, actually.
Right? And that's been showing up for, okay, we're going to celebrate this no, however your no gets, however big that is, I'll honor it. I might be on the other side of that fence, right? And to find out on the other side of that there is someone who now wants to connect. I can get that big. I can say no to you that way, and you're going to honor that. I can, you know, drop my basket and you're okay. What an amazing journey. It's that proof point again of freedom of expression.
Yes.
Being the connecting place. And,
yes.
and for me, I can show up with as big as it gets.
Yeah. You've learned or, you know, remembered how to hold that space.
Yes.
And I think that's where many of us as horse people, we kind of reach our edge and we're like, oh, that's enough.
That's quite enough. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay. I'm there.
And it's tricky though, isn't it? Because it's one thing for Libby. Libby is not ridden. That's not off the table, but she has full expression. Now, for me to say, you have freedom for full expression while we're in the middle of traffic and right?
Right.
No, it's not going to go that way. And I don't want to put that on the table, because that is a scenario where I'm going to have to pull the veto card on her. And I do, but I just am very mindful that is not the regular occurrence.
Yes.
That's more the exception to the rule.
The exception.
Veto is regularly enacted.
Yes. And I know, that, Geri and I have quite like mirroring ponies in some ways with Diva and Libby. Just a sec, I'm going to handle the Chihuahua. And, I know that, I ride and I, do some big stuff, was just at the Cowgirl reunion, sort of attempting to guide out 8 riders and having no idea where I was going. With one horse losing it, and cows and the whole 9 yards, and and it was hilarious because Diva, I mean, she's 19 now, and she like completely threw a fit, like almost tossed me in the ring in front of everyone, and I was just giggling because I just thought, oh my God, like, I was actually happy. I'm like, oh my God, you're 19, girl. Like, look at you go. Just bronking around the ring. Because there was a tent. This was her point, right? She was like, okay, like, I'm done. There's a tent between those trees. I've never seen it before, and
I gotta go.
Like, I'm done,
Yeah.
And it made me laugh though, because everybody's like, you okay? All good. Yeah, just hanging on to my horn.
And what a great attitude to bring to the table, though, hey, with it, rather than a wrong-making attitude. It's like, whoa, look at you.
That's the thing. I'm like, dude, you got some juju. I'm loving it, So if we can bring that humor to the table, I'm sure, I know that you can relate to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then there was a point as well that I was like, okay, Dee, we got a job to do here. Like, you got to get yourself together,
Yeah, you got to trust me here.
Right? Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Because no one else knows where they're going.
Yeah, there are those moments, right?
Right.
Like, I'm going to have to pull the V card and we got to go.
And we got to go. We got to do this. We got to show up. And, but, it's, that there's a balance there, that it's not always like, okay, we're constantly existing in this state of me controlling you,
Yeah.
Situations. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh,
and I explore that concept as with friendship, right? Like, there might be a scenario where we're together and I see a bus coming and I'm like, whoa, Alexa, we got to go. Right? But generally, in the whole scheme of things, I'm not going to be micromanaging your life for you.
Exactly.
Blouse and this and that. No.
And that looks terrible on you. And, no.
Don't think that.
We're only doing things that I like. And I do think that's, so if we sort of like use that friend comparison, I mean, it's a balance. You wouldn't stay in the friendship if it was like, we're just always doing the things that I want to do and I don't really care what you want to do.
Yeah, it's that simple, isn't it? But it's interesting.
It is. And how often do we ask, like, okay, so what are you needing? Like, what are you jiving on right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you want to do today?
What do you want to do? Yeah. And I mean, I love watching you, Libby, because I feel like you are so good at just opening up that opportunity for, like, hey, what do you think?
Thank you. And part of these learning opportunities with Gay Bradshaw, with Nevzorov, these experiential exercises where, sort of spend time just being aware of expectations you might bring into the space of how your relationship or that together time is going to go down, or I love this experience around accompaniment.
Yes, I wanted to talk about this. Awesome.
Yeah, I had the most amazing experience exploring accompaniment.
Can you define that for us?
Yeah, it's a concept within liberation psychology, and it was a term coined by an Algerian, Frantz Fanon, and it essentially encapsulates this sense of walking beside. It's almost like a compañero, a breaking bread, a being together with, in parity and equality. So in sort of this experiential exercise, I was to go out and experience the world through Libby. And we were out together in the field, and I just got into this zone where I could sort of feel her interacting with the weather, feel how her ears would, as the wind would blow and her ears would kind of strain a bit to take in her surroundings more, how she was selecting from the browse, and how she would respond to the different non-human animals in her sphere, right? So an owl would call and she'd pay attention to the owl, and a deer would, some deer would run by and she would take some cues there. And I started to feel the wind more on my cheek, and feel how I responded to the elements and these other beings. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm so insignificant. I'm with her. I can understand her experience and how we're together, and she's in nature. She is interacting with many, many more facets than just me. So me, central figure in her life, right? I had this appreciation of her life, how she lives, what's important to her, her environment, the language of nature, and she right-sized me. This experience of accompaniment. Yeah, really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And that sense, I know I just did, was very privileged to be able to take this beautiful training in Indigenous allyship. And I know that you're quite interested in it as well. And it was this very, simple yet profound understanding that, like, it's not like, and again, it's that versus. It's not like me versus the earth, or, you know what I mean? Like, it's literally like, I am.
Yes.
This is me. Libby is the earth, like there is this, there's not a disconnect there, as we are so, very much like colonialized to believe there is.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I'm so looking forward to taking that allyship training. And that's with Paul Haniks.
Yes.
In September. I'm really looking forward to
that. So for anybody in Salt Spring, check it out. It's potent work and very important at this time. It goes into this whole topic of decolonization, and also into our own sense of our own indigeneity, because they're getting a little bit off track, but I think coming around to an important place is that for many of us that are, settlers here or of settler descent, we've lost that connection to where we come from and the land that we originally arose from,
Yes.
long ago, that we were indigenous to.
Yes.
And, and we crave that. We crave that. And I think that question that you chew at on a daily, really speaks to that craving of your own. Where is that land that that those ancient ancestors did their ceremony and had their traditions and lived in this way with that land. Right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is the place where, and we're so lucky, those of us who have the privilege of accompanying non-human animals, is I think that we have the opportunity to attune, to remember that that our place.
Yes.
There's this beautiful saying. I've got it somewhere. Can I read something to you?
Oh, yes, I know. I was hoping that you.
Well, this is there's real key, but there's this other beautiful. There's a Cheshire elementary school teacher, and his name was Yusto Oxa. And he talks of this space called the IU. Have you heard of that?
No, I haven't.
Okay. He calls the community the IU. Is not only a territory where a group of people live, it is more than that. It is a dynamic space where the whole community of beings that exist in the world lives. This includes humans, plants, animals, the mountains, the rivers, the rain. In IU, all are related like family. IU is not where we are from, it is who we are. Humans are not separate from Mother Nature. I am Wantura. I am not from Wantura.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that whole concept. And I think that is that, when we talk about the decolonization and even that space of sanctuary, my personal experience has been in connecting that way, in remembering that. There's been a peace and a harmony in the space where I live that I call a sanctuary, that is a habitat for so many beings. Yeah.
Yes. Geri has these stalls that I literally would sleep in.
Well, they're walk-ins.
They're not stalls.
No,
they're walk-ins. Yeah. But where Libby can just lay out amidst a bed of cushy sawdust, and I'm like, oh, I have envy, right? For this space. Yeah, you've created.
Yeah, she enjoys that. She enjoys that, I think. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And tell us a little bit, for me, I always forget that, it's, I think it's getting less weird to talk to your horses when you're animals, thankfully. But for me, it's so natural, and I know for you, it's so natural. So I don't know, can you describe the process of how you communicate or understand the bee, or what she's needing or wanting?
Oh, that's such a good question. And it's like, how do we describe that language?
Oh,
right. That is, somebody had said something. I'm not sure if it's Alan Watts, or they said something which I really love. Nature is so multidimensional. Language is so scrawny.
Yes.
How do we talk about this? How do I? And so, did you ask the question about how I talk to?
Yeah. How do you feel into those? Just for all the horse people out there going, I don't know what they need. I don't know what they want.
It's so interesting, and even the word "talk to," right? Because I find that the more silent I became, the more I understood. Yeah. So that idea of talking or discussing, or I've heard people say about, I don't get any answers back. I don't hear any answers. And I'm like, I don't know. I think all of this has happened in complete silence.
Yeah.
And it had to become so quiet in my mind. And the intention of hearing and understanding, not hearing, of understanding that in that quietness, and no attachment to how the messages or the feelings or that understanding arose. That was the opening to that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then it would, my curiosities are that generally centered around, what's important to you? How can we make things even better? And just sitting for whatever length of time, maybe just going about things even while Libby processed herself and came back when she was ready with an answer that might arise in me as a feeling or merely a sense of understanding.
Yes.
Yeah. There was never a visual, nothing was ever skywritten, no emails came in. It was just that.
No, like hand of God stuff, like, booming voice in your ear.
It was just an understanding arising.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And I appreciate you sharing it on that level. And I think you found the words, my dear.
Woo!
Yay. Yeah. And I engage very similarly with, what we might term intuition, or, that sense of, it just is there, and I'm like, oh, I all of a sudden contain a different knowing, or a new knowing of something that wasn't there before. Like, and it could be something so simple like, oh, she needs like something different in her feed, or, today let's go out and do this thing, or I need to, make an appointment here, or, it's yeah. These little bits. And sometimes it's bigger, it's a big process that is ready to happen.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think for me, as we worked together, once I peeled away, I guess almost a sense of an expectation of how an understanding was going to arise. I was going to ask a specific question, and then moments later, a specific answer would arrive in a certain format, that I would somehow receive it in a way of words or something in my mind, very, very human focused. Once that was peeled off, then answers arose quite readily. Yeah. And even with Lucy, I remember almost a preparation for her passing where she was downloading.
Oh, yeah.
She was doing a soul download, and I'm like, whoa, this is freaky.
But I'll ride the wave.
Whoa. Is this supposed to be happening?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as we hold that space, I mean, what I've noticed is, like, as that space is being held, the horses naturally go, oh, I've been waiting for you out here, yeah. It took you so long, kind of thing. That sense of, there's so much there to explore.
Yes.
We allow, and I love when you say just being still, being quiet, being, because that it really speaks to even the term that Laura Bird and I use is like neutrality. But that truly is the place where the answers come, not from that like grabbing, kind of searching, seeking kind of place necessarily, right?
Yes, I think that is the key, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Big time. And I have never met a human that didn't need to be more neutral, including, some of the most enlightened, so to speak, like we all can be in practice.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my goodness. We're nearing our end here, everybody. So sad. I'm so sad. I love my conversations with Geri so much.
Thank you so much for arranging this.
Oh, well, thank you for being willing to come and speak with us. So grateful. And
only you could get me to speak.
I feel very privileged. Thank you. Aww. And I want, Geri, before we complete, we always do a little bit at the end about resources or things that, like are good touchstones for you and that you feel would benefit other horse people. Do you have anything that you are, just love and want to share?
Well, I do absolutely love. There's this, for anybody who's interested in exploring the concept of accompaniment and psychosocial accompaniment. I think reading Mary Watkins.
Yes, the article.
That's pretty interesting stuff. Okay.
Well, do you think I can attach that?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. And anybody who's interested in Gay Bradshaw's work, she's, you can find her at Kerulos, and that's KERULOS.org.
Okay.
She's up to some pretty interesting. Well,
yeah.
Of course, I'm a fan of gays too.
Okay, I will include those resources, and I'll include the PDF on the podcast page at wholehorse.ca. And I look forward. I actually just started reading that article this morning, so I'm looking forward to diving more deeply in, and and getting to know this work a little bit more myself. Aw, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Yay. And I want to just thank everybody who's tuned in. As always, we appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen and join us and learn a little bit, hopefully. And we shall see you soon.